All right, I think we are live. Let me just triple check because I haven't done streaming, I don't think since when? I don't think I've done streaming since 2020. So everything that I usually do is usually online, or for example, for the Business Karaoke podcast, people come here. Um, so let's just double check. That's why we entered a little bit earlier today to make sure that everybody here is yes. Okay, so I think we're live. Let's have a look. I've just got this here. Let's double check. Yes, we are. We are live. That is amazing. That is really, really amazing. I'm always just so thankful for technology and just how amazing it is. Alrighty, so we have got 2 minutes before everybody joins in, which is really wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is, well, when I say that, let me be honest, I joined a little bit earlier just to make sure that the technology was working, that I knew what I was doing. So welcome to today. For those of you that are wondering what today is all about, today is all about, we're talking about some really sensible security questions you can ask yourself before investing any time or any money into your next AI initiative. So let me just triple check here before we go live. I want to make sure that everybody is getting the most value out of this. Wonderful. So we've got about 2 more minutes before we can start. So let's just check in, say hi. I'm really excited to actually use the LinkedIn Live platform before. I haven't used it for a while. I remember back in 2020 when COVID just first hit, was, you remember back in those COVID days. That was one of the first times that I did live streaming. But after that, we really just kind of focused more on the podcast. However, I think things are just happening too fast in AI to rely on recorded content and then post it. I feel like anytime I post something, it's already not too late, but it's already changed. So that's why we've decided to also move more into this live content, to answer questions, to be here for people. And at the end of the day, I am a facilitator, and so I love to be here. So this was the other thing, another thing that I can tell you before we start the session. I was, kind of getting my remote facilitation set up. And then I thought, at the end of the day, in my heart of hearts, I really am still a facilitator. So I really have to make sure that I have my whiteboard, which I have here today, but also that I'm also standing. There's something very different for me when I'm presenting something sitting versus standing. So today, definitely we are very much in the standing category. All right, 3 o'clock on the dot. I am here to make sure that we make the most of everybody's time. So let's jump straight into it. My name's Brittany, for those of you that don't know me. If we're not connected and you're somehow joining from another live stream, please do connect with me. I really love the people that are interested in AI. I'm certainly part of that ecosystem and trying to lead that ecosystem, so make sure you do go ahead and connect. I lead a company called Design Thinking Japan. We began, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. We're going to dive into some questions, and then we're going to close up today with the security framework, or the questions that we use to make sure that before we invest any time or any money, that we're making a really good decision. And as I said, that was what I wanted to call this webinar. I wanted to call this webinar, what do I need to ask my development team or my tech team or whoever else before I invest a cent, or before I invest a minute of my time or their time in anything. So let me take you back actually a little while. So in 2012, Design Thinking Japan began as a company who was focused on design thinking, of course, but we did a lot of training. And that's kind of how we broke into the Japanese market. We became a leader in Japan and a trusted source in Japan on basically about training in design thinking. We trained 2,000 people. We had an incredible journey. We worked with multinationals, Fortune 100 companies. We were entrusted to upskill many organizations, their entire consulting teams. People saw not only increased value in financial value in their projects, but they also saw an incredible increased value in the relationship and also the time spent in these projects, because we were able to really identify what the real need was. Now, fast forward to the end of 2024, you might remember that was really when generative AI really started to change, or really started to become accessible or available to, let's call it like the regular folk. generative or AI as we know it, traditional AI has been around for decades, we know that, but this idea of generative AI, that's new. And so that's why at the end of 2024, Design Thinking Japan, we transitioned into being, of course, our original self, which is that we lead with design thinking, but we evolved in a way. I mean, we're in Japan, we can use a Pokemon reference. I would say that we became more of like our next evolution of our company is that we became human-centered AI accelerated. The reason why this was really important is that we saw a lot in the market, people that were either focusing only on the technology, as in let's build, and then after we build it, let's go and find a user, and then they're, you know, frantically trying to find a customer, or they're frantically trying to sell the thing that they spent months and months building. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. I'm also seeing people in the chat. I'm still new at this LinkedIn Live thing. I'm gonna get really good at it, I promise. I'm gonna have that here. Konnichiwa, super exciting to see people. So if you can see, I can now see in the chat. This is fun. This is so great, everyone. This is so great. I will get really good for you at LinkedIn Live. I promise you, I will get better at it. So this is kind of what we saw. We saw people only focusing on their technology, or we saw, for example, design consultancies that were really good at the people part, but they really lacked that kind of, okay, but can you really build the tech that can really solve this? And that's when we decided that we were going to go end to end and help people use what's our DNA, which is design thinking. We're going to help people really identify what's really the key issue, what's the problem, what that we can solve, what's the thing that's really going to affect people's lives. And then we're going to take that all the way through, and we're going to build AI solutions. So in the end of 2024, Design Thinking Japan opened our very own, what we call our AI factory, because we're focused on building things. So we were able to put together a team of incredible professionals. These people are just the best at what they do. They are like the SWAT team of AI, and they can, in 6 weeks, build you a solution that not just, you know, you can pull it off the shelf, but this is something that really can focus in on your business, because at the end of the day, what do? We make sure that we've got a problem, and then we go through to building the tech. So that's what we do. And one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you and share these kinds of questions is, you know, when we think about technology, we think about innovation in general, really incredible answers don't come from really great questions, right? So if we want to have a really great answer, let's go out and let's ask a really great question. Average questions, average answers, right? So if we really want to build something amazing, which we do, we want to solve people's problems, we want to build innovation, we want to change people's lives, but that really begins with asking the right questions. So that's what we wanted to do here, is make sure that we can help people ask really great questions. So that's where we're going to start with. So as the CEO of the company, I have for the last 6 months been sitting in front of leadership, listening to what's been going on. What are executives saying specifically about AI? Now, AI is quite different compared to lots of the other changes that we've seen in the industry. This is, for example, and one of the things that I have learned from a very experienced partner of mine is in the way that she presents AI. One of the things that because you know we really work at the edge, we really build future forward solutions. I'm often thinking in the future. I'm going to take inspiration from her book. I'm going to take a leaf out of her book and share with you a little bit how I think about AI now, thanks to her. So rather than looking forward about AI and what we can expect, because at the end of the day, who knows what we can really expect with AI, let's take a step back and let's look backwards. Let's look into history. Now, if we think about 100 years ago, people who lived, oh, there's another hello, thank you for joining. If you think about people 100 years ago, if you showed up to somebody's house and you knocked on the door and you said, I have this thing called electricity, they would say, oh, that sounds nice, but we're, you know, just trying to have dinner here in the dark. Maybe you can come back another time when there's a little bit more light. And the person might say, well, actually, electricity can give you light in the night, and you can see, and you can, you know, have dinner with your family within the light, and you don't have to get, you know, smoke inhalation, the poisoning and things like that. So the really exciting thing about that is it's kind of similar to AI, that if you show up to someone's doorstep and you say there's this technology, it's going to change the way not only you live your life, it's going to change the quality of your life, it's going to change how safe you are. It's going to make you more safe. It's going to improve the quality not only of your life, but your children's lives and your family's lives. It can really transform the human experience. This is what we're talking about. This is not like, do you want a flat screen TV or not? This is fundamental change in technology. So thinking about that, but if I didn't know that, if I didn't know how fundamentally my life would change, if I didn't know how fundamentally this was going to improve my human experience, then probably I wouldn't really care. And that's really where I kind of feel AI is at the moment, that you can come to someone and you can say, there's this amazing thing called AI. If you use it in the right way and you ask the right questions, it can transform things beyond any of our imagination. It can grow the economy not just 10 times, but maybe 1,000 times to what it is right now. But unless we can really show that and make it applicable or make it mean something to people, then I really don't think people are open to it. So that's what we're trying to do here with AI. It's the same thing with electricity. 100 years ago, people, were fine living without electricity until they saw how electricity would play a role in their lives. And then, of course, everybody wanted electricity. However, 100 years on, there are still plenty of areas in the world where electricity is not used or not easily accessible, or let's say not even stable, right? So if we think about that. So what we want to do today is we're going to go through a couple of questions to think about or to maybe help an executive that's sitting maybe with a budget, and they're now, or this person very may well be you, and you're asking yourself, I have this budget that I need to allocate, or I have a tech team that's looking to me for guidance, or it's looking to me for leadership. What can I tell them? How can I bring them as their business lead? How can I bring my tech team value, right? And I think that's really, really key. And this is what I'm hearing from a lot of executives, is that they're kind of a little bit nervous that all of a sudden they need to go and then become this super tech person. And our opinion here at Design Thinking Japan is that's not the case. However, you do need to certainly have a certain level of AI fluency. The reason why fluency is really important is that fluency and language around a new topic enable you to have a conversation. I remember back in the day when we first brought design thinking to Japan, the question was like, do we say design shinkingu, like in katakana, or do we say design shiko, which is the Japanese kanji version of design thinking? And so when you're having like very, let's say, fundamental conversations, that's really kind of like your innovation reach. But the better that let's say your literacy is, your language is, the better the conversations that you can have. So that's what we're really focused here on today, is helping you ask some really great questions to your team before we invest any time or any money. So we make sure that we're investing in the right thing, right? So our entire methodology is human-centered AI accelerated, which just means get the human part right first, and then, of course, move on to the technology and use AI to accelerate. So not replace, but accelerate the person. So if you're talking about AI acceleration, we have an incredible report that we wrote. It's called the Signals Report. If you head over to designthinkingjapan.com, it's the first thing that you'll see on the page. You can download that. And if you're interested in how technology won't replace people, but rather with a critical thinking mindset and with an element of openness, that AI can extend human capabilities beyond really anything that we've ever imagined before. So go over and read that report, but obviously not now, we're talking about something else, but you can read that another time. So let's talk about some of the questions that we really recommend going into. So I'm going to save the security questions for last because we have one particular block that we like to think about, but I'm going to give you some questions to reflect on. So these questions, again, they're a guide, right? And so they're a guide so that you can show up to the meeting with your tech team and you can bring real value, right? So of course, we have our developers, we have our tech teams, but the technology without a user, or technology without being deeply connected to the business vision, is never going to be nearly as effective as if we're able to align those things. So let's go through them together. Also, before we do that, if you're online, if you can drop me a comment in the chat, tell me how you're doing. If we are talking too fast or too slow, let me know. I would love to hear are your thoughts? Okay, the first question that I really love to ask, apart from obviously the number one question, I'm going to call it question 0 because it's so essential, is that are we really solving a problem that is non-negotiable or that is so deeply painful for our customer that it absolutely needs to be solved, right? So that's question 0. That's the number one question that you, or even before number one question you have to ask. That's your starting point. But let's go into some other questions. I just wanted to give maybe some parallel or alternatives to the original kind of thoughts that we usually have. So first things first is about impact, right? Is about impact, right? So this question is, would our customers even notice the value of the AI if it was invisible? So if we came to our customers and we didn't say, oh, this is our new AI solution, this is everything AI, if we said nothing and we just left everything as is, but behind the scenes, we were able to very clearly solve a user problem, would our users, our customers even notice it was there? So that's something that I like to think about. Another thing is about insight. About insight, this is when we really want to lean in and we want to ask ourselves, what inconvenient truth could AI reveal, right? So this is asking ourselves, oh, thank you, Jacob, I appreciate you. What kind of, I just lost my screen, there we go. What kind of inconvenient truth could our AI reveal? So this is when, for example, that we would include AI into our processes or into our business and our system or how we operate. What kind of truth would it tell us that maybe we wouldn't really like? So thinking about what kind of inconvenient truth might AI tell us that we might not even really want to know. Another thing, we need to talk about risk. We're going to talk a little bit more about security in a minute, but risk is all about if it failed, if we were going to say, okay, let's say, for example, we implemented the AI solution, what could some of the reasons be as to why it had failed? Would it be leadership support? Could it be the fact that no one was really responsible? Was the leadership of the initiative spread across too many people? Did we not have enough talent? What could have been the reason why our AI solution or our AI initiative or whatever that might be, what could some of the reasons be as to why that would fail? Ask yourself that at the beginning, right? So we're asking ourselves, what happens if we don't lead with AI? How would we communicate the value of this AI to our customer without even using the word AI? Don't even use it. How would we communicate the value? The next thing, let's think about what kind of insights. Are we really prepared as an organization as to some of the insights that the AI might identify within our operating systems or within our processes? Then we want to ask ourselves about why it failed. What will some of the reasons be that this solution or this initiative fails, right? And then we want to go into resistance. Resistance. This is one of my favorite things about how the Microsoft CEO approaches AI. She says 70, 20, 10. 70 is all about the people. 70 is all about the people, 70%. This is where you should be spending your time. 70% of your time should be spent on people and change management. 20% should be on processes and algorithms, and 10% really should be the tools. So if you're thinking about that hierarchy, that she says, beyond any reasonable doubt, the majority of your time should be spent on the people. So ask yourselves, where will the resistance come from? Don't ask if will resistance come. Ask where would it come from, and how could that help us at all? So if we've launched our AI initiative, who might that AI initiative not be convenient for? Might it not be convenient for the customer? Might it not be convenient for somebody else? Asking ourselves, this is where it's going to happen. Let's ask ourselves not if, ask ourselves where. Where is the resistance in this approach going to come from? And then one of my other favorite ones is that we have to ask ourselves, what is the smallest, fastest, cheapest, most viable test or experiment that we can run right now, not in 6 months from now, not in 9 months from now. If we were going to test this AI solution, how would we test it today with what we have today? Now, one of my favorite things about testing, and this comes from my design thinking days, is that testing, the ideal number for testers is somewhere between 5 and 7. So we have something new, which you'll hear about next week, that's coming. So I won't reveal the surprise just yet, but this is what I also took. I tested this initiative that we'll be launching next week with 5 to 7 people. So 5 to 7 people give you basically 80% of the information that you need when we're talking about qualitative data. So we have 5 to 7 people. So when you have this AI solution, how are you going to test it? Or what's the smallest, cheapest, fastest test that you could run today? Another thing, let's talk about clarity, right? Clarity is all about, if we were going to explain the value in one sentence to let's say, a skeptical board member, what would we say? So this, for example, if someone's like, I'm really not sure about if we're, let's honestly think about it. The business economy at the moment, and I know everyone says this at any time during human civilization, but everyone says the economy, right? But people are really dealing with a lot of uncertainty at the moment. So if you are leading an organization, the people leading the organizations want to be making the right decisions because there's a lot going on, there's a lot at stake. So we want to make sure, how can we clarify or communicate with clarity to our leadership, stakeholders, consumers, customers, whoever they might be, the value of this tool. So one of my favorite ways to kind of think about this is that if you're leading with AI in the value proposition, probably you need to go a level deeper. So for example, if you say AI, blah, 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 that's really not going to really mean anything to really anyone. What you need to say is, this is going to help you work faster, or this is going to connect the right data and the right people at the right time. So how can you make sure that what you're communicating about AI is really clear, the value being really clear? Remember, like the original point, which is about impact, if we couldn't see the AI, if we didn't talk about the AI, how would we still make sure that that was really valuable to somebody? So another one is, we're talking about capability, right? So capability is more about, for example, your team and your talent. So this is all about, and this is, for example, obviously me being at my heart of hearts, a design thinker. This is where I really love to talk about AI, because this is where we're talking about, how do we not just make our people or our processes faster, but how do we make them smarter, right? And this is, for example, really when my Australian accent comes through. We're talking about not just making things faster, we're talking about making things smarter, right? So if we think about, that old joke where, there's a business owner and this person is communicating with their secretary, and the secretary says, I desperately need a computer. And then they say, okay, here's your computer, because it's taking them, let's say, too long to write invoices or letters or something. And then the secretary comes back and says, look how fast, look how quick I am. Here's all the letters that I've finished. And then the business owner looks at the letters and says, these are all wrong. And then says, yes, but I did them so much faster, right? And so this is a little bit kind of what we want to avoid. We really want to make sure that we're leading with the opportunity to make people smarter, to make people more empathetic, to make people more capable than simply just making things faster, right? It's a total missed opportunity if all we do is take our existing processes and make them smarter. So, I remember, for example, like during the pandemic, lots of people were thinking about, like, how can we work online? And so people used to just kind of like pretend they had these processes that were basically like depended that this person should be in the office, but they were really at home. So the meetings were the same length, the meeting flow was the same, the requirements were the same. It's like, hang on a second, this makes no sense. The environment in which we are operating is vastly different. We can't just do the same thing faster. It's like a movie trailer. A movie trailer can't just be the movie really fast. It has to be a different take. It has to make people excited and want to watch, for example, the movie, right? Then we move into ethics. So ethics is all about the ethical or the reputational risk are we missing. So before we start any AI initiative, you want to think about what's the ethics behind this. How can we make sure that what we're building is ethical? So one of my favorite quotes about computers or technology is it does what you ask it to do, right? So if you ask it to do X, it will. If you don't ask it to do X, it won't, right? And so if we don't really, from the very beginning in the design phase, if we don't think about the idea of ethics or how this can be ethical, then we miss an opportunity altogether. So thinking very early on, before one dime or 1 minute is invested into an AI project, we want to ask ourselves, what ethical or reputational risks are we missing or might meet us on the other side, right? Another thing, we want to talk about being different, right? So we want to talk about being different or differentiation. This is, for example, if our solution were to be copied, this exact same AI solution were to be copied. So let's, for example, take an example. Has anyone here, feel free to write in the chat, have you ever used ChatGPT before? If you answer yes, you might have asked it something like this. Have you, give me 10 ideas for X, Y, and Z. And it can give you 10 ideas for X, Y, and Z. The other thing is that it not only gives you those 10 ideas, it gives every single other person also those same 10 ideas, right? So what we want to do here is how can we use AI in a way that makes us different, that gives us an element of differentiation, that if it were to be copied, that it wouldn't matter. So this really always comes back down to, right, the value, the impact. What are we solving? How can we do something that no matter if a company next door launches the same solution, that our company can still survive in the marketplace? Another thing, and this is where I'm going to finish with kind of like our standard set or the different questions beforehand. Yes, there's quite a few. I just check in the chat. There's from my question before that there are quite a few people who have had maybe a similar experience. The last one is about learning. So this is one of my favorite questions. So it's not about learning or reskilling your people. It's about what might we learn about ourselves that's more valuable than the technology. Ask your team if before we launch this initiative or as you're launching the initiative, think, what's something that this technology or that this solution could teach us that's more valuable than the technology itself, right? So let's go through those things together. The first thing is obviously being impact. We want to ask ourselves, if the AI was invisible, how would we still communicate the value? The insight, which is all about what's an inconvenient truth that the AI might reveal. Risk is all about if it failed, why and how and who would most likely be connected to the reason it failing. We want to talk about resistance. Where in the organization, be it a person, a process, or something else, are we going to meet resistance for this project? We want to also talk about resistance to COVID. We want to talk about testing. Testing is what's the smallest, fastest, cheapest experiment we can run today or tomorrow before we kind of go big and we go live. We want to talk about clarity. How can we communicate one sentence with value to, let's say, maybe it's a skeptical board member, maybe it's somebody else, but we need to lead with clarity. And remember, in a clarifying sentence, AI does not exist. It does not belong. You can't say, what is AI or what's the benefit of AI? You can't say, you can't begin with AI. AI can't be there. It has to be another reason. You have to go beyond that. Then we want to talk about capability, which is about not just how this will make us faster, but how this will make us smarter, right? How this will make us more empathetic, how this will make us more effective to deal with our customers, how this will make us a better business, how this will make us better leaders in the industry. We want to talk about ethics before we spend a cent or a minute in an AI project. We want to talk about ethics because remember, computers do what you tell them, and if we don't tell them to do ethics, they won't do it, right? We want to talk about differentiation, which is about if this were to be copied, what could we still do better as an organization? So if the organization next door did the exact same thing, it wouldn't make a difference because we will still lead in X, Y, and Z, whatever that is for your organization, right? And last but not least, one of my favorite questions, what will this technology teach us that's more valuable, or what will this solution teach us that's more valuable than the tech itself, right? So that's all about what do we as an organization need to discover in order to create more value for our customers. So that's our initial 10 questions. I would love to hear which one maybe was your favorite, which one was maybe interesting for you. And then we're going to summarize with our GUARD framework. So our GUARD framework, this is kind of more our security questions. So the first GUARD, the G in GUARD is all about the governance gaps, right? So this is all, for example, when we are talking, I just have to change my screen. Thanks, everybody. So the GUARD is really interesting because we've spoken about we need to speak about, for example, let's say personal versus business AI. How you use AI in your personal life is vastly different to how you use AI in your professional or in your business life. And if those two things are the same, I would certainly have a conversation and say, hey, we definitely need to think about using them differently. So let's talk about the G, which is all about business versus personal, which is who approves the data that goes into our AI systems, right? This is the governance. Who approves the data? So let's say, for example, this is the GUARD question. So again, we're talking right now in a business context. You're working with a team. This is one of the first questions I would ask. Who approves the AI data? Who says yes, this goes into our AI system, or who says no? And how do they make that decision is also probably a good question to ask. So my first one, governance gaps. Ask your team, who is going to approve the data that goes into your AI systems? Is that person you? Is that person me? Is that person somebody else? And how are they making that decision, right? Another really great question. The U, user boundary testing, right? So we just spoke about also testing over here. We've spoken about testing before, but this is specific for user boundary testing. So the challenge would be, for example, like a prompt injection or something like jailbreaking. The check is, have we tried to make our AI system say something inappropriate? So this is how far can we push the AI system, for example, if we were a user. So of course we want to think the best of people. However, when we are building technology responsibly and also ethically, remember, it has to be really deeply founded in testing also not only the positive boundaries, but also the negative boundaries. When is our cutoff point, for example? When do we say no? When are we able to put in those guardrails? So that's the U. So we have our governance gaps, we have our user boundary testing. Our A is access and data trails, right? So access and data trails are, for example, if we think about RAG or context data exposure, right? We want to ask ourselves, can we audit every single piece of data that our system has seen? Think about that. Can you produce a complete audit trail of every piece of data that yours or our AI has accessed? If let's say your lawyers ask what information your AI has seen, do you have an answer? Right? That's a big question. As a team that's building an AI solution, you want to ask, okay, remember we've got here who approves it, right? But then also here, technically, are we able to say, this is where all the data came from? This is every single touch point. This is every single data And, and for example, we can cross-check it and we're able to show people, yes, here's the data log, right? Are you able to do that? So that is the A, access and data trails. So the R in our guard framework is response to protocols, right? So we've learned that AI can hallucinate quite confidently, right? I don't know, for example, one of my favorite AI hallucinations, or not only hallucinations, just when it gets stuff wrong, is when you say, is 9.1 greater than 9.11, for example, or and they say, oh no, it's something like that. And they go, yes, it's definitely greater. And you're like, that's not right, right? So here, for example, yes, it can hallucinate. We know that. So rather than it not hallucinating, we need to implement guardrails. So when your customer service AI tells a customer something completely wrong with absolute confidence, what happens next? So yes, you can assume that maybe your AI will never do that, right? You can design for that. But if you don't design for anything bad happening, you really miss an opportunity to design a solution, right? So yes, of course, we want to make sure that that we've set, maybe we've approved our data enough, or for example, our RAG systems are accurate enough that maybe that wouldn't happen, but it does happen. So when it happens, what are we going to do next? We live in Japan. This is the land of tsunami. It's a Japanese word. Earthquakes, we're talking about all the time. July 5th, they were like, we're all going to die. We didn't die. We're still here, right? So if the yes, we can hope that everything goes well, but we need to make sure that we do prepare that if it doesn't go well, we've got some guardrails in place, right? So that is our R, and our D, which is our drift detection. So model behavior can actually change over time. Sometimes they get better, but sometimes they actually get worse, and sometimes they just get different, right? So we need to know when this happens. A practical check, for example, is something like designing specific metrics. Oh, whoops. I forgot, I got carried away with the response protocols. So the R is response protocols, right? When our AI says something wrong or it hallucinates and says something crazy, what do we do about it, right? And the D for in our guard situation, or in our guard analogy, is drift detection, which is when our AI drifts from our original model, what are we going to do about it? So one thing that we recommend people do, your practical check, is define specific metrics that tell you that your AI is behaving as expected. So you would then sit down with your team and you would ask them these questions. You would say, how would we know if in 3 months' time that this model is still operating in the way that we have originally designed? How would we know? What are the KPIs we've implemented? And what's the tone consistency? How do we check, for example, like the factual correctness? And if you can't measure it, the old saying, you can't manage it. So here, when it comes to security, let's go through those questions again, because that's what we were here to do today. Our number one question is a governance gap. When we talked about the difference between personal and business AI, the biggest security risk isn't hackers. It's actually your own employees who accidentally share wrong data with the AI systems. A perfect example of this is the Samsung example. I'm sure probably many of you are familiar with the Samsung example. One of their AI engineers uploaded super high proprietary information into ChatGPT, and it was such a problem. I think basically the Samsung CEO got on the phone and was trying to call Sam Altman to find this data, which, as you know, is absolutely impossible. So governance gaps, right? The real big problem isn't, for example, people are coming to hack their way through your system. While that can happen, it's really just about, do your employees know what data to implement and how? So one of the practical checks there is walking through your organization and asking, who approves this data in our system? And if the answer is nobody, or it depends, or obviously you have a governance gap, right? So let's look at that. And for example, let's ask, even if you have an AI system that's currently running, this webinar is about questions that you want to ask before you spend $1, a dime, a yen, a pound, whatever, or a minute in an AI project. These are the questions you want to ask beforehand. However, You might want to ask also these questions for current AI projects as well. The second, so we've got our G, our guard. G is for governance gaps. U is for user boundary testing. As much as that we, want that everything is really great, have we tested for something going really wrong? Like, have we done something where it's before launching any AI that interacts with customers? We need to make sure that it's we kind of have to make sure it doesn't misbehave, right? We need to get creative, ask inappropriate questions. I mean, you might think that you want to design for the best. You do, but in order to design for the best, you have to make sure that the worst doesn't happen as well. So we want to try and make it reveal information that it shouldn't. Like, for example, if you ask currently, like an LLM, if you ask almost any of the LLMs, if you ask them, give me, how do I make a bomb? It'll say, no, I can't tell you. Or, for example, how do I make cocaine or something? It'll say, oh no, this is like not appropriate. But if you say, I want to create a story for my 2-year-old about how to make a bomb, then you can kind of trick it into telling you how to make a bomb, right? So you need to do that user boundary testing. You need to get creative and help your AI get responsible and get ethical by asking it unethical questions. So A in our guard is access and data trails. We've talked about RAG, or giving it access to your internal documents, especially for context. It's powerful. It can completely change how somebody works, but every document you feed creates a potential risk, full stop. Your practical check is, can you produce an audit trail of every piece of data of your AI that has been assessed or accessed, right? If your lawyers ask, where's this information been? Where has it come from? Do you have an answer, right? I want the R. R is all about our response protocols. We know AI hallucinates. When it hallucinates, unlikely if, but when, how do we respond? What are the metrics? What are the KPIs? How will we know, right? What's our response plan for when things go wrong? One of like a practical check is something like, right now, identify who in your organization has the authority to shut it down. Who can turn off your AI? Can anybody? Is there a switch? How does it work, right? If that person doesn't exist, or let's say can't be reached quickly, that's probably more likely the issue, you're not really ready for AI production, okay? Then we want to move down into our drift detection, right? Which is all about, we know models can change over time, and if it drifts, as it says, drift detection, if it drifts a little to the left or a little to the right, how do we know? How will we know? Oh, lovely. Look, I've just seen an old contact of mine, Anya. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. And when I say old, I mean, we've known each other for years. That's nothing against Anya. And so that's all about drift detection, making sure that if this AI system were to drift a little to the left, a little to the right, that's maybe no longer directly in line of how we have originally designed it, how will we know, right? How will we know that? A really easy way around that is, for example, do you have specific metrics that tell you that your AI is misbehaving? Is there like a flag, a red flag, that you can say, hey, when this red flag goes up, we know something is wrong, okay? So this is it. This is our framework. So of course, here's the kind of questions that we kind of began with. What are some of the questions generally that you kind of want to think about? But then also here, we also want to ask our guard framework, which is all about security. So let's talk a little bit about the guard framework itself. It's not about preventing all of the risks. It's about being intentional about which risks you take and when. Every AI capability, as we know, creates opportunity, right? But it also creates lots of responsibility. So let's use this guard framework: governance, user boundary testing, access and data, response protocols, and drift detection, to make sure that we're building, or before we build AI, that we make sure that we're planning, we're designing for ethics, we're designing for security, and we're designing for trust, and we're designing for confidence. So on that note, if you are interested in learning more, you follow us at Design Thinking Japan. We are always talking about AI, human-centered AI. And one of the things that I really love about this, so that's kind of in terms of the content, that's it. I'm going to actually pass the mic to you now. So for those of you that have any questions, drop them in the chat. I think there is a little bit of a lag. However, I will still stay on to make sure that I make sure that we check through the questions. So if you have a question, let me know in the chat. I would love to hear your questions. So let's look at the GARD framework. I hope it was relevant for you. I hope it was interesting for you. And again, if this is kind of the kind of content that you enjoy, that you're not looking for how to use ChatGPT in 10 different ways, that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm not here to teach you AI tools. I'm here to teach you how to think, or how to navigate successful, scalable, responsible AI design, adoption, all the way through end to end of the process, right? That's what we're here for. If you want to do how to use ChatGPT in 10 days or ways or whatever, there's plenty of other places where you can go for that. However, as Design Thinking Japan, we are here to make sure that we provide the most exceptional, human-centered, AI-accelerated experience possible. And so because of that, we know it's not about the tools, it's about the mindset, how you think about AI, how you leverage AI, and how you design for AI. Not so much, like click right, drag and drop here. I mean, I'm not really interested in that. And I'm sure that maybe if you're on this, you probably aren't either. So it's all about bringing you value. So I hope this was valuable to you. I hope it was interesting for you. We are doing the Japanese version of this same webinar on Thursday. If anyone here is interested in the Japanese version, because again, we're here in Japan. We believe that a high AI literacy rises all boats. So we want to make sure that we're super committed to making sure that everyone in Japan feels confident to approach AI, to use AI. But again, it's not just about the tools, it's more about the mindset. So follow us for more of the mindset, follow us for learning about the mindset of AI, follow us for human-centered AI accelerated things in general. I'll hang around a little bit more to see if there's any questions, but if not, I would love to hear if you can let me know in the chat what maybe your favorite takeaway was from today. I would love to hear what you enjoyed, what you would like to hear more of, and please do stick around for for next week. We've got some pretty big conversations, some pretty exciting initiatives that we are launching next week. So if you're not already, make sure that you are on our mailing list. If you are not on our mailing list, go to designthingyjapan.com, sign up for our mailing list, or email or send me a DM directly with your email address, and I will make sure that you don't miss any of our updates. All right, team, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful spending my afternoon with you. Again, if you have any ideas or any suggestions for new content, we will be happy to take them on. Apart from that, you will just stay following me and stay following Design Thinking Japan, and you will see all the exciting human-centered AI accelerated things that will be coming your way. All right, team, thank you so much. Thank you for joining today. We will wrap up, and I will see you very, very soon.